Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is the Mental Wellness Channel with Waihiga. Today we're going to be talking about childhood trauma. So I got a question from one of my subscribers and they asked, how did childhood trauma make you to the adult that you are today? And before we even get into this topic, I want to make clear two things. One, I am not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I am none of these things. All I am is a person who has lived experiences. The second thing is that this is not going to be a video that bashes my parents or blames them in any shape or form. I absolutely love my parents. They gave me life. They've given me the life that I have today, and they continuously support my journey. And so this will not be a video of bashing or blaming them. These are simply the things that I have come to realize have made me the person that I am today. So let's get into it. Childhood trauma. Childhood trauma. I think that most of us have experienced childhood trauma. It is very common. If you've gone through childhood, there've definitely been good times and bad times. And the bad times leave an imprint or leave a wound inside of us that we carry on into adulthood, shape us into who we are in adulthood, shape us into the decisions that we make, the people that we become later on in adulthood. And in terms of childhood trauma, there are categories of what childhood trauma is. This childhood or this child abuse, definitely this child abuse. And in child abuse, there's so many different things. So in childhood trauma, there's bullying, there's community violence, there's complex trauma, there is early childhood trauma, there's natural disasters, there's refugee trauma, there's physical abuse, there's medical trauma, there's sexual abuse, there's sex trafficking, there's terrorism and violence, and there's traumatic grief. There's also spiritual trauma or spiritual abuse. And I can talk briefly about a few of these types of abuses. Obviously, physical abuse. When you are physically violent with a child, when you abuse a child in such a way that they are not able to sit, to eat, to sleep because of the pain and discomfort that you have inflicted on that child, that is physical abuse. And physical abuse can be experienced in the home. It can be experienced outside the home by a caregiver in the home or by any adult outside of the home, or even peers of that child outside of the home, which would obviously branch out into bullying when the child is being beaten up. And that is really detrimental to a child. Physically abusing a child it's not good at all. And as parents, I think there is a thin line between discipline and between physically abusing a child to the point that a child can't walk, can't speak, can't sit, can't eat. And when that child is actually petrified of you, I think there is a thin line between disciplining a child, physically assaulting that child. The sexual abuse. Sexual abuse, I think, is the worst thing that you can do to a child, because you're introducing that child to sexual perversion and you're completely robbing that child of their innocence. A child has no understanding of sexual perversions in that way, of sexual imagery in that sense. A child is so innocent. A child is so accommodating to thoughts of just being out there in the world, of unicorns and rainbows and just playing around with other children and being innocent and happy and free. And when you introduce sexual abuse to a child, that is any sort of inappropriate sexual behavior, kissing, touching their private parts. When you introduce that sort of thing to a child, you imprint on them such a nasty thing, because you rob them of a way of life. You introduce that child to sexual perversion, and you introduce that child to a way of thinking that through sex they are able to gain love, gain material things, gain self-worth. And I'm speaking very loosely, but psychologically, mentally, physically, the way you impact that child follows them for the rest of their lives, and they're going to seek and they're going to need a whole lot of therapy and a whole lot of spiritual intervention to overcome what you have just introduced to them. I'm speaking very loosely again because I have not experienced sexual abuse as a child. But these are the stories, these are the experiences that I've heard from people who have unfortunately been abused as children. Then emotional abuse. This is when you starve the child of love. So that child grows in a home or a setting where they're not able to feel loved. They don't know where their self-worth comes from. They're not being fed or nurtured in a way that tells them that who they are and what they are is enough from the home. So this child grows up to looking for love, to looking for affection, and to looking for things outside of themselves. And it's so sad because parent or caregiver is supposed to feed that into their children. Also manipulating children, verbally abusing children, psychologically just manipulating them in a way, and using emotions and silent treatment to emotionally starve that child of love is a form of abuse. Spiritual abuse is when you take your religion, whatever religion it may be that you as a family unit believe in, and enforce it so harshly on the child that it becomes detrimental and harmful to the child. And this is where we go into cults, taking a religion and it becomes extreme. So Islamic extremism, Christianity extremism, taking God, who is perfect, who is love, who is kind, who is generous, who is understanding, perverting that and twisting the Bible or twisting the Quran or twisting religion in such a way that you use religion as a fear tactic or something to control your children with, to the point that that child never wants to hear about religion when they grow up, to the point that that child never wants to hear about God when they grow up. You have misrepresented God. You have misrepresented religion to that child. And now forever, they do not want to hear about God because of the way it was represented to them in such a harmful way. And of course, neglect. When you are in the position where you can care for your children financially, emotionally, educationally, physically, and you do not shelter them, you do not feed them, you do not clothe them, you do not give them love, affection, attention, you are neglecting that child. When you leave the child to being cared for with nannies 90% of the time because you are chasing your career and you think that you'll be able to get away with letting other people bring up your child simply because you have the means, the financial means to take care of that child. In a sense, you are neglecting your child. As a parent, your presence is everything to a child. Your presence is being there through the good times, through the bad times, through the mundane times, through the daily boring pickups, dropping your kid at school, picking them up from school, not just during their birthday celebrations, not just during Christmas, not just over the holidays, but every single day. And when your presence is not felt, you are neglecting that child. And when you're leaving them to nannies and other people to raise them, these people are having direct access to your children and they are directly influencing your children, and they are placing their values, their principles in your children. And your children will look up to these nannies and to these other people who are actually looking after your children, and they'll place more importance on them than on you because they are present, because they listen to your child's needs, because they are in your child's life day in and day out. Yes, you may provide the home. Yes, you may be writing the checks. Yes, you may be the one that keeps the lights on. Yes, you may be providing the food. But at the end of the day, who is there to tell your child stories at night? Who is there to wake them up in the morning and help them brush their teeth? Who is there to pick them up after school and hear their stories of how they were bullied in school that day? If you're not there for that time and those moments, your child will turn to someone else and will place heavy importance on that person's opinion rather than you. You know, there are also parents who have absolutely nothing. Due to poverty, due to mental illness, due to wars, due to whatever circumstances, they can't provide 3 square meals. They can't put down 3 meals on the table every day. They can't even put 1 meal on the table every day for their child. They can't afford to send this child to school. They can't afford to clothe this child. They can't buy clothes every month. They can't really do much materialistically, but they are able to be present with their child. They're able to give their child love. They're able to be in communion and communication and community with their child. So I think it boils down to priorities between what is urgent and what is important. Because what is urgent is not important, and what is important is not always urgent. But what is important is always important, and what is urgent is not important. So for instance, if your job keeps calling, your job will always call. There will always be some urgent thing to attend to in your job. There will always be something important to attend to in your job. Raising children, you only have 18 years with them. And especially those formative years from 1 to 7 years old, or 1 to 10 years old, or 1 to 12 years old. Because by the time they're teenagers, they're more independent, they're thinking for themselves, they're doing things by themselves. So let's say between 1 to 13 years old is when you really have time with your children. If you think about it, that's a really short amount of time to really instill a foundation in your children, to really instill love, self-love, and all the values and principles that you want to instill in your children. But if in those 13 years you're chasing your career, you're chasing money, you're chasing accolades, you're chasing whatever you want to chase, those 13 years will disappear and someone else would have raised your child. Whether it's media, whether it's TV, whether it's the nanny, whether it's friends in school. And then you get to 25 and you wonder, why is my child acting this way? So set aside those 13, 15 years, because those are important years. If it means one parent staying home and the other parent being at work, maybe that's what it needs to be. Those 15 years, those 13 years are so important. They're so important. Because what is urgent is not what is important. There will always be an urgent phone call from work. From the first day you start work until the day you retire, there will always be something urgent. But what is important is those 15 years that you have with your children, those 18 years that you have with your children. Because remember, what is urgent is not what is important. What is important will always be important. So in my personal story, I grew up in a 2-parent household, which I am very grateful for. I grew up in a Christian household, which at the time when I was growing up, I did not like that. I really hated the fact that I grew up in a Christian household. I did not like God or the concept of God. It was hard because I felt like I was being pushed into Christianity and I didn't want to. So we went to church every Sunday, most Sundays. We did things like read the Bible, not every night like I hear some households do. But we had dinner most nights together, and I'm really thankful for that because we got to talk as a family. Now in retrospect, obviously I'm grateful that I grew up in a Christian household. One thing I will say is that I never connected with my family at a point. I think from the age of 12, I just distanced myself from my family. And I don't know exactly why I didn't feel connected, but I just didn't feel connected at all emotionally. I didn't feel like I was wanted. I always had a spirit of rejection. Nobody wants me, nobody could care to want me. And it was really difficult for a long time. And that's when I started looking for other things to fill my life, to fill me with that sense of love, that sense of acceptance that I was looking for. And so I looked for it in booze, I looked for it in relationships, I looked for it up and down and sideways, and I never found it until I found God, who is still working on me, working in me. I can't say I'm fully whole, but I was definitely a troubled child in the sense that I isolated. I was very depressed and angry, and I didn't want to talk to my family because the thoughts that I was experiencing in my head were just so dark. I was homicidal and suicidal, and that now has been diagnosed as bipolar. But you can't diagnose bipolar in your preteens. Bipolar is something that, it's a condition that is normally, it comes out in your late teens or early 20s. And I was diagnosed with it in 2018. Alcoholism is also something that, well, I am an alcoholic, but it started in my thinking from very young. And I had to channel those thoughts. I had to do something about it. I had to drink over it. And I did for a long time. And in the beginning, my medicine was to drink. Now, if I go back in time and ask myself, well, if I had talked to my family about what I was feeling, would things have turned out differently? I don't know. I think things needed to happen exactly how they needed to happen. A lot of parents ask me, well, I have a daughter or son who acts exactly how you describe. They're depressive, they lock themselves in their rooms, they don't want to talk to me. What do I do? Take that child to see a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor so that that child can at least have an outlet. I did go see a therapist when I was really young, a child psychologist, but then I think I stopped going, and then I tried handling it on my own, and then I found alcohol, and I wasn't even ready to take therapy seriously. All the years I've been in and out of therapy, it wasn't until I got sober that I was ready to take therapy seriously. But I would still advise that you take that child to counseling so that they can decompress. I used to journal a lot, and I've started journaling again. And please, parents, don't read your children's journals. Don't do that. Don't read your children's journals. I know it's very tempting to want to know what your child is going through, what they're thinking about and stuff like that. If you read their journal, then don't let them know what they have written, because it can be a breach of complete trust. That child will not write again if they found out that you have read through their journals. And that could be the one place where that child really lets out what is going on in their head. You know, as a parent, you're looking at it like, I really need to figure out what is going on with my child. And I understand that now. But as a child, you're just looking for privacy, a place where your thoughts won't be read. To have a parent read your journals, it's almost, oh my gosh, it's someone looking into your innermost self. It's horrible. Because that child, I guarantee you, will not write again. If you don't have money to take your child into therapy, your child needs an outlet. Your child needs a way to journal. And one of the best things to do is to write down everything. One of the best things a child can do is to journal. So even though your child's behavior may really scare you, don't read the confidential things that they are writing down. Or if you do, never ever let that child know that you know what they have written down. Don't ever bring it up, because that child will be very scared to write those things down. And that child will just bottle everything up and carry everything on them again, and will never write anything again, and will now turn to other things to release all that is going on inside. What I'm grateful for is that my parents never gave up on me. No matter the hell that I put them through, they still support me to this day, even though we've gone through so many ups and downs. And for me, my childhood trauma would be what? I was bullied in school. For my weight. It just compounded. It really compounded that inner wound that I had about rejection and not feeling good enough. My dreams got really grandiose, and I said that I'm going to be the thinnest, the most beautiful, the biggest star in this world that nobody can deny. Because inside, I felt so worthless, so rejected, and so unseen. And so I said to myself, especially when I found out that I could act and I was really good in drama, I said to myself, this is my meal ticket. This is what is going to show the world that Waihiga Mutero is a star, and Waihiga Mutero is a human being to be reckoned with. This is what cemented me in the world. I never thought that I would be speaking about my vulnerabilities and my imperfections, my alcoholism, my bipolar, my depression, my suicide ideations. I thought that I would be doing interviews with Oprah and talking about how I just did an amazing picture and an amazing video, and how we're talking about my spread on Vogue, because I wanted to run away so badly from how I felt inside. I wanted people to see me for my mind, my intellect, my talent as an actress, and I wanted people to fall in love with my beauty, and physically, my beauty, how thin I am, how beautiful I am. And alas, God had other plans, because those things are just so futile and so fleeting. And so that's not the plan, and that's not how things happened. And it's okay, because that Hollywood life, that celebrity life, that celebrity culture is so brutal. It's so brutal. I don't know how I would have even handled it if I had ever made it to Hollywood. Life is still, a journey. Who knows, maybe I'll make it one day, but I still don't know how I would handle it. I'm not secure in myself. I still have a lot of work to be done in me. I still have a lot of wounds to heal, especially when it comes to my looks and my sense of rejection that I still have a bit of. And it comes out in the people that I date, the people that I attract, what I subconsciously think that I deserve. I hope that this video helped you, and let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Before I go, please do me a favor. I've noticed that a lot of my subscribers don't get to watch my videos when it comes out, so please click that subscribe button and also click the notification bell so that every time I drop a video, you get notified. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.